Hey guys, tonight we're starting with a story. World War II Jewish history scholar Eva, on a quest to uncover her grandfather's disappearance and gather research for her new book, stumbles into Poland's Echo Alley on a rainy night and gets trapped in a time loop. So before you settle in, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to see people joining us from all over the world. The rain came crashing down suddenly. Eva's car had just turned off the main road when the pea-sized raindrops pelted the windshield, the wipers swishing back and forth with a monotonous squeak that never quite cleared the view, only alternating between blurriness and clarity in the darkness ahead. On the car radio, a singer's saccharine voice crooned a pop song about summer beaches, the upbeat electronic rhythm jarringly out of place with the gloomy downpour and the stark larch trees lining the road. She reached up to turn down the volume, her fingers brushing the cold knob as she glanced instinctively at the passenger seat. There lay an old pocket watch, its brass case tarnished with irregular patches of corrosion, as if gnawed by time. The link of the chain was wrapped in several loops of faded red string, worn smooth from constant handling. A gift her father had pressed into her hand on his deathbed. His hand, then emaciated and bony, had clutched the watch so tightly his knuckles whitened, as if it were his last connection to the world. Go to Poland. Find your grandfather's trace. Her father's voice, muffled by the hum of the ventilator, had been faint yet unwavering, each word seemingly forced out from the depths of his throat, heavy with the weight of a life ebbing away. He didn't disappear. He's hidden in a page that's never been turned, those deliberately erased histories. Someone has to dig them up. Eva still remembered the sudden spark of light in his cloudy eyes as he spoke, a stubborn glow she had never seen in his later years. Her father had spent his entire life compiling the family history, but the section about her grandfather had always remained a blank. In his final months, he had thrown himself into poring over old archives, the stack of yellowed papers on his desk growing taller than he was, until his lung function failed completely and he had no choice but to stop. Eva was a scholar of Eastern European folk history during World War II, specializing in the exile and disappearance of Jewish families under Nazi rule. This trip to Poland was ostensibly to gather research for her new book, The Unspoken War, a project she had been working on for 3 years. She had interviewed dozens of World War II survivors, yet she always felt the book lacked a core warmth. The cold statistics and grand historical narratives never quite captured the true agony of individual lives caught in the war. Her secret motive for the trip, however, was to fulfill her father's dying wish. Her grandfather, Leo Cohen, had vanished without a trace on a late autumn night in 1942. All official records marked him only as missing in action during the war. No witnesses, no relics, not even a clear adult photograph. Eva had scoured every public archive in Poland's National Archives and the Jewish Historical Institute, finding nothing but a tattered 1941 Jewish household registration list. On it was a boy named Leo Cohen, whose date of birth matched the childhood years her father had described, and whose registered address was 3 Market Lane, Malbork, her destination for this trip. Before departing, she had double-checked the address repeatedly in the archive's microfilm, but on the latest electronic maps, there was only a newly built residential area, not a trace of Market Lane. The GPS signal cut out abruptly, the screen flickering for a moment before turning a harsh blue, followed by the message, "No available route." A cold electronic voice repeated, "Location unavailable. Please check signal." Eva frowned and pressed the brake, the car sliding a short distance on the wet road before coming to a steady stop. The rain intensified, as if the sky had split open, a dense curtain of water almost enveloping the car. The headlights pierced the mist, illuminating barely 3 or 5 meters ahead, revealing a road paved with irregular cobblestones, fringed with damp moss that glowed dark green in the light. She rolled down the window slightly, and a cold, damp breeze mixed with the scent of soil and rotting leaves rushed in, sending a shiver down her spine. She vaguely remembered that according to the map, there was only one asphalt road leading to the town center nearby, smooth with clear road signs on either side. But the road before her was unfamiliar, as if it had materialized out of thin air. Rainwater filled the gaps between the cobblestones, which would surely squelch underfoot, and low stone houses lined both sides, rusted iron hooks hanging from their eaves. Nothing like a modern residential area. Market Lane. Eva squinted, making out a tilted road sign through the headlight beam. The sign was wooden, its edges rotted and peeling to reveal the dark grain underneath. The letters blurred by rainwater. Only the prefix Rhynek, Polish for market, barely legible. The rest dissolved into a dark smudge. She pulled a paper map from the glove compartment and spread it across the steering wheel, rainwater seeping through the window gap to dampen the edges. She traced the road lines with her finger, checking 3 times. There was no Market Lane marked on the route to Malbork. She hesitated. The rain showed no sign of letting up, and distant thunder rumbled, as if a bigger storm was brewing behind the clouds. Turning back might mean encountering flash floods or landslides, but this alley, though old, seemed to lead to some settlement. Perhaps the map was outdated, or it was a local shortcut, she told herself. She pressed the accelerator again, the wheels crunching over the cobblestones with a dull rumble, splashing water onto the car body, leaving dark streaks like tear tracks. After driving about 200 meters, the alley narrowed, the stone houses closing in on either side as if ready to topple over. Eva glanced instinctively at the passenger seat, her heart constricting sharply as if squeezed by a cold hand. Next to the pocket watch, a yellowed photograph of a child had appeared out of nowhere. The edges of the photo were curled, the paper damp and wrinkled, with several small tears exposing the white cardstock underneath. It showed a boy of about 7 or 8, wearing a faded white shirt with a small button sewn at the collar. His eyes shy as if afraid of the camera, yet a faint smile lingered on his lips, as if he had just been made to laugh by the photographer. She slammed on the brakes, the car jolting violently, the pocket watch and photograph sliding toward the edge of the seat. She reached out instinctively to catch the photo, her fingertips brushing the damp paper, cold, with an indescribable brittle texture unique to old documents. Eva's hand trembled as she paused at the edge of the photo before picking it up carefully. The back was blank, only a thin layer of dust dampened by rainwater into faint stains. The boy's facial features were eerily similar to the scanned image of Leo Cohen in her phone. Same high nose, same light brown eyes, even the tiny mole above his eyebrow in the exact same spot. But she was certain she had stored all her research files digitally on her phone, organizing them into folders for easy reference. She had never printed any of them. Where had this photo come from? She fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking so much she pressed the unlock button incorrectly several times. When the screen lit up, the signal bars were still empty, the time in the top right corner reading 9:47 p.m. She opened the file folder, scrolling quickly to find Leo Cohen's record, zooming in on the blurry archive portrait. The phone screen's glow reflected on her face, revealing the details of the 2 faces, virtually identical, except the archive photo was a profile while this one was a front view. A strange chill crept up her spine, and she began to wonder if she was hallucinating from exhaustion. A cold dread settled over her, sending another shiver down her spine. Eva placed the photo gently back on the passenger seat, next to the pocket watch, as if the 2 inexplicable objects could somehow neutralize each other. She took a deep breath, her lungs filling with cold air that stung sharply. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had accidentally tucked a printout into the map while organizing her research, and it had fallen out when she spread the map open. Or perhaps it was something her father had left behind while researching their grandfather, which she had inadvertently brought along. But even she couldn't believe these excuses. She vividly remembered that all materials related to Leo were digital, and there were no physical portraits among her father's belongings. She blinked hard to clear her blurry vision, rubbing her temples to ease the fatigue from days of traveling. Maybe she was just overworked and overthinking, she told herself, restarting the car and continuing forward. But this time, her gaze kept drifting involuntarily to the photo on the passenger seat, the unease in her chest growing like tangled vines. After rounding the first bend, the car radio erupted into a shrill burst of static, a scratching sound like nails on rusted metal that swallowed the saccharine pop song instantly. In its place came a slow, melancholic jazz melody, old, with the distinctive crackle of a vinyl record, as if playing from a phonograph decades past. The saxophone's deep, lingering notes mingled with intermittent piano chords and faint sounds of applause and conversation. Eva froze, reaching instinctively to tune the radio, twisting the knob in circles, but no matter how she adjusted it, only the jazz melody played on a loop, as if it had hijacked the entire frequency, drowning out all other signals. She even tried pressing the off button, but it seemed to be broken. The melody continued to echo through the car, blending with the rain outside and the crunch of wheels on cobblestones to form an eerie harmony. "That's strange," she muttered, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly. She reached over and yanked the radio's power cord out, and silence finally returned to the car. But the jazz melody had etched itself into her mind, repeating over and over, impossible to shake. It sounded familiar somehow, like something she had heard in a World War II-era music archive. A tune popular in Polish Jewish ghettos before the war, gentle yet tinged with longing for peace. Later, under Nazi persecution, most of this music had been destroyed, leaving only a handful of record fragments. The rain continued to fall, and even with the windows closed, she could hear the steady patter on the roof, growing faster and faster, mixed with the wail of wind through the alley, like someone weeping softly. She focused on the road ahead, the uneven cobblestones making the car lurch, the vibration of the seat traveling up her spine, heightening her already frayed nerves. She drove on for what felt like 10 minutes or maybe half an hour. Eva had lost all sense of time, the oppressive atmosphere in the car suffocating. Up ahead on the left, she spotted a shop with a sign. The wooden door was rotted and warped, scored with deep scratches as if from some impact. The sign was iron, rusted around the edges, painted with a simple bread motif in red pigment that had flaked off in large patches, revealing the dull metal underneath. The text below the bread was blurred by rainwater. She slowed down, turning the headlights to full beam, focusing the light on the sign, and made out the words Kowalski's Bakery. The name struck her like a bolt of lightning. She instantly recalled the tattered Jewish household list. Leo Cohen's neighbor had been Jan Kowalski, a Polish baker who had vanished during a 1942 roundup, listed in the archives as missing, whereabouts unknown. Her heart began to race, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. She drove on, rounding a second bend and passing a crossroads. On the cracked flagstone at the intersection was a faint Star of David, the Jewish symbol. Eva's heart skipped a beat, and before she could react, she saw the bakery sign again up ahead. The same iron sign, the same bread motif, even the exact same streaks of rainwater running down its surface. A curved rust mark like a small snake where the paint had peeled on the left, a missing corner on the bread design exposing the metal underneath. She could even see the worn wooden basin on the bakery steps, a large crack along its edge, filled with rainwater and floating a few dead leaves, exactly as she had seen it twice before. Her heart pounded in her chest, as if about to burst. Couldn't be. She had been driving straight ahead, so how could she be back here? Had she gotten lost and accidentally circled around? Or was the alley itself circular? Eva bit her dry lower lip, forcing herself to calm down. She scanned the stone houses on either side of the window, searching for a landmark. The third house had a round window, the fourth a broken column by its door. She memorized these two markers, continuing forward, counting the bends silently in her mind while keeping an eye on their positions. 1, 2, 3. After rounding the third bend, the sign for Kowalski's Bakery came into view once more. This time she saw it clearly. Though the text was blurred, the letters Kowalski were unmistakable. The K had a distinct rusted hook, the O an irregular circle, as if painted with a fingertip dipped in pigment. And the two landmarks she had memorized reappeared too. The round window on the third house, the broken column on the fourth, even the cracks in the column identical to before. The wooden basin on the bakery steps was still in place, the leaves floating in the same positions. Eva's mind went blank, a cold terror sweeping over her. This was no circular road, nor had she misremembered the route. She was trapped in an inescapable loop. Eva slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the cobblestones as the car skidded a short distance on the wet road before stopping in front of the bakery. She collapsed onto the steering wheel, gasping for breath, cold sweat dripping down her forehead to soak her bangs, clinging to her skin with a chilling touch. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and rapid like a drum, throbbing in her eardrums. She realized she was trapped in a terrifying loop. This alley had no exit. Every step forward was just circling back to the start. She thought of the folk tales she had studied, curses of time loops, spaces trapped in history. Once, she had dismissed these as nonsense, as psychological projections of post-war trauma, but now she was living through something supernatural. She reached trembling for the pocket watch on the passenger seat, her fingers brushing its tarnished brass surface, rough with corrosion. Opening the case, she saw the hands spinning wildly, like a top, clockwise for several turns, so fast they blurred into a streak, then suddenly counterclockwise at breakneck speed, impossible to read. Inside the mechanism, there was a clicking sound, as if the gears were grinding against each other, on the verge of breaking. She glanced at her phone again. The time now read 7:32 p.m., a full 2 hours and 15 minutes earlier than the 9:47 p.m. she had seen moments before. Even more bizarre, the phone's clock had gone haywire. The second hand skipped a dozen ticks per second, while the minute and hour hands swung erratically, pointing to 3 a.m. one moment, 5 p.m. the next, as if performing an absurd time farce. She tried restarting the phone, but the screen only flickered a few times before going completely black, unresponsive to all button presses. "No, that can't be," Eva whispered, her voice barely audible. She blinked hard, trying to dispel the illusion, but the watch's spinning hands and the phone's chaotic time before it died were etched clearly in her mind. She was a scholar, trained to explain everything with reason and logic, but what was happening now defied all her understanding. Could it be from exhaustion? Or was there a strong magnetic field nearby interfering with electronic devices and mechanical watches? She remembered researching World War II military installations. Some underground bunkers did generate strong magnetic fields that disrupted signals and equipment nearby. The thought eased her anxiety slightly. Maybe there was a scientific explanation for all this, nothing supernatural. She pushed open the car door, cold rain instantly soaking her hair and clothes, the bitter chill jolting her mind into clarity. She walked under the bakery sign, wiping the rainwater off it with her hand, her fingers touching the rusted metal, cold and rough, as she tried to make out more of the text. Kowalski's Bakery, established 1923, specializing in rye bread, sweet rolls. As the rainwater was wiped away, the blurred words became clearer, and Eva's heart raced faster. 1923 was a time of peace before the war, when Malbork was a multi-ethnic town where Jews and Poles lived in harmony. Kowalski's rye bread was said to be famous throughout the town. Her gaze drifted down to the bottom right corner of the sign, where smaller, heavily rusted letters read, "Closed 1942." 1942, the height of Nazi persecution against Jews, and the year her grandfather vanished. This was no coincidence. She looked deep into the alley, darkness swallowing the road ahead like a giant's open mouth. The wind in the alley grew stronger, swirling rainwater against the stone walls with a tapping sound, like someone clapping in the shadows. Back in the car, Eva tried to turn around and head back. But no matter how hard she turned the steering wheel, it felt as if an invisible force was holding it, heavy as lead, allowing the car to move only forward, impossible to steer. She gripped the wheel with both hands, her arm muscles tensing, veins popping on her forehead, but the wheel wouldn't budge an inch. She pressed the accelerator, the engine roaring as the car picked up speed, trying to break through the loop, but after rounding the bend, the bakery sign appeared again. Same words, same wooden basin, even the same smell of dampness in the air. She tried hitting the brakes, wanting to stop in her tracks, but the car seemed to have a mind of its own, continuing to creep forward until it stopped once more in front of the bakery. This invisible force was toying with her, trapping her in a hopeless predicament. Despair spread over her like a cold tide, rising from her feet to engulf her entire body. Eva turned off the engine, sitting in the car as she listened to the rain, her mind a jumble of confusion. She was a scholar, used to explaining everything with reason and logic, but what was happening now was beyond her comprehension. What kind of place was this alley? Why was there a loop? And where had Leo's photo come from, appearing out of nowhere on the passenger seat? Could it be, as the folktales claimed, that this was a space trapped in history, and she was an accidental visitor? She remembered her father's dying words. He didn't disappear. He's hidden in a page that's never been turned. Had her father known about this alley all along? Known that her grandfather's secret was hidden here? Countless questions swirled in her mind, throbbing in her temples. She buried her head in her hands, leaning back against the seat, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the rainwater on her cheeks, cold and bitter. After what felt like minutes or an hour, Eva's emotions gradually calmed. She wiped her tears, taking a deep breath to force herself to stay composed. Panic wouldn't solve anything. She had to find a way to understand what was happening. As a historian, her greatest strength was finding patterns in chaos, uncovering truth from meaningless details. She pulled out her phone, now black, and tried charging it, but even connected to a power bank, it remained unresponsive, completely broken. She opened the camera, though she knew it was useless, hoping to take photos of the eerie alley and the bakery sign as evidence. But when she pressed the shutter, the screen showed only an impenetrable fog, white and churning like a living thing, swallowing all light. She checked repeatedly, pointing the lens in different directions, but the result was the same, nothing but fog. How is this possible? Eva frowned, her confusion deepening. She tried again and again, taking photos and videos, but each time only fog appeared. Unwilling to give up, she pushed open the car door and stepped out to explore. The rain had eased a little, now a fine drizzle tickling her face. On either side of the alley stood low stone houses, their walls built from irregular stones held together with dirt and straw, much of it crumbling to expose the rock underneath. Dark green ivy climbed the walls, its leaves glistening brightly in the rain against the gray stone. Many windows had no glass, dark and hollow like empty eyes staring at her. The outsider. A faint smell of mold and dust wafted from the windows, mixing with the damp air to create an oppressive atmosphere. She walked slowly along the wall, her steps light, afraid of disturbing something. She stopped in front of one stone house, looking up at the door plate. It was metal, rusted around the edges, engraved with the year 1942. The letters pressed into the metal, sharp and clear, though faded to a dark brown. 1942, the year of the most brutal Nazi persecution of Jews. Her curiosity piqued. She continued forward, stopping at the next house. The doorplate read, 1938. That year, World War II had not yet fully erupted. The Nazis had just begun implementing anti-Semitic policies, and many Jews still clung to the hope of survival, choosing not to flee. Further ahead, Another house bore the year 1943, the year of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, when countless Jews had fought back against the Nazis with crude weapons, only to be brutally suppressed. These door plates, appearing and disappearing in the rain and mist, seemed to connect key historical moments, as if the alley spanned different time periods. She reached out to touch the 1942 door plate, feeling its cold surface and a faint vibration, as if time was flowing beneath it. Eva paused, studying the door plates closely. In 1938, before World War II, Malbork's Jewish community had been thriving, and Kowalski's bakery had done brisk business. In 1942, during the height of Nazi persecution, the final solution was in full swing, and countless Jews were deported from ghettos to concentration camps. In 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising had ignited, a failed but inspiring act of resistance. These years were closely tied to her research and to the mystery of her grandfather's disappearance. Could this alley be a fragment of history frozen in time? A vessel for the memories of Jews who had died in World War II? She remembered a theory she had read in an academic paper. Traumatic events could leave memory imprints on spaces, which could be activated under certain conditions to recreate the original scene. Could the rainy night be the trigger that had awakened this memory imprint? She returned to the car, restarting the engine and continuing to drive through the alley. This time, instead of trying to escape the loop, she paid close attention to her surroundings, searching for patterns. She pulled out a notebook and pen, and by the faint residual light of her black phone screen, she began recording details of each loop. The time she saw the bakery, changes in the doorplate years, sounds around her. She noticed that when she was alone in the car, the loop accelerated, bringing her back to the bakery every 3 minutes, the atmosphere growing more oppressive and the wind more shrill. But everything changed when she found an old teddy bear in the corner of a stone house during one of her walks outside the car. The bear had been discarded among a pile of rotting leaves, half buried in dirt, only one tattered ear visible. The teddy bear was worn and tattered, its light brown fur matted and mostly fallen out to reveal the yellowed cotton underneath. One eye was missing, leaving a hollow socket, while the other, a red button, had lost its luster, hanging crookedly from its face. Its nose, stitched with black thread, had come loose, exposing more cotton. Eva carefully lifted it from the dirt and leaves, wiping off the mud and rain with the hem of her coat. The bear still carried a faint scent of milk, mixed with earth, like the smell of a child. She placed it on the passenger seat, leaning it against the seatback to face her. When she restarted the car, something miraculous happened. The loop slowed dramatically, stretching from 3 minutes to 10, and after rounding a bend, she saw a section of road she had never noticed before. The cobblestones here were smoother, worn down by years of footsteps, and on the right side was a small flower bed overgrown with weeds, withered now but clearly once tended to. This new stretch of road lasted only a few dozen meters before the familiar loop resumed, but it was undoubtedly a breakthrough. "Passenger," Eva muttered, her eyes fixed on the teddy bear. Could the loop require a passenger to be broken? Who had this teddy bear belonged to? Which child had dropped it in their hurry? She looked from the bear to Leo's photo, a bold guess forming in her mind. The loop in this alley was connected to the Jews who had disappeared during World War II, and these objects were carriers of their memories. The teddy bear represented a child's childhood, the photo Leo's existence, both witnesses to that history. She reached out, gently stroking the bear's matted fur, feeling its soft texture beneath her fingertips. If her guess was correct, finding more of these memory carriers might allow her to piece together the full truth of what had happened and find a way to escape the loop. Hope rekindled in her chest, replacing the despair and fear with a hunger for the truth. In the hours that followed, Eva paid closer attention to changes on the passenger seat, and sure enough, she discovered more patterns. With each loop, a new old object appeared, as if the alley was actively showing her this history. First came Leo's photo, then half a bottle of perfume. The glass bottle was faded, its once clear surface now a pale yellow, the label smudged beyond recognition. Only the word rose barely legible. She opened the bottle carefully, and a faint rose scent wafted out, soft. Not the harsh chemical fragrance of modern perfumes, but the natural aroma of rose extract. The scent reminded her of the rose soap her grandmother had used, one of her warmest childhood memories. Third was an unsent letter, its yellowed, brittle paper torn at the edges, the handwriting in deep blue ink, Polish, elegant and delicate, with a distinctly feminine grace. Eva deciphered it word by word, managing to read the full content. It was a letter from a mother named Sarah Cohen to her husband, describing the terror of the war, Nazi persecution, and her longing for him. She mentioned their son Leo, writing that he had been having nightmares about being taken away, and that she could only hold him close and soothe him with the rose perfume, letting him remember the smell of a normal life. Fourth was a rusted key, a small Cohen engraved on its handle, the teeth worn down from years of use. These objects would fade and grow transparent as dawn approached, eventually disappearing completely, leaving only faint scents behind. The rose perfume lingered in the car for hours, a reminder of Sarah Cohen. The ink on the letter carried a faint woody aroma, characteristic of pre-war Polish paper. The rusted key smelled of iron mixed with a faint metallic warmth, as if Leo had once clutched it tightly in his hand. These scents blended in the damp air, creating a unique fragrance, strange yet familiar, like history lingering at her nostrils. Before each object disappeared, Eva carefully recorded its details in her notebook, sketching its appearance and noting the scent. She knew these objects were her only link to the past, messages from forgotten souls. She dared not miss a single detail, even a tiny scratch inside the perfume bottle cap or a worn mark on the key handle. She documented them all meticulously. Additionally, Eva noticed that even with the windows closed, she could hear other sounds mixed with the rain. Heavy footsteps, as if someone was walking on the cobblestones in thick leather boots. Steady, rhythmic, and oppressive. Whispered conversations, fast-paced, in Polish and Yiddish with only fragments audible. Hide, evacuation, be quiet, don't cry, child. The faint, muffled sobs of a child, heart-wrenching as if their mouth was covered. Sometimes, she heard a woman's gentle, trembling voice comforting a frightened child, or an old man's devout prayer in Yiddish, his voice weathered and sincere. These sounds faded in and out, as if from another time and place, drifting and mingling in the rain like a tragic symphony. Eva tried calling out into the air, speaking in Polish, "I can hear you. I want to help." Her voice was faint in the rain, quickly swallowed up. No response. She tried again in English, using the academic language she knew best, expressing her research into the period and her sympathy for their suffering. Still no answer. The sounds continued to drift, like an endless silent play. She even began teaching herself simple Yiddish phrases, writing, "I am here to bear witness," and "I will not forget you" in her notebook, practicing their pronunciation repeatedly. Whenever the sounds grew clear, she would recite these phrases into the air, useless perhaps, but a form of solace for the souls trapped there, she thought. Time slipped away in the loop. Eva had no idea how long she had been in the alley. She felt as if she had driven back and forth 100 times, the objects on the passenger seat changing constantly. Beyond the perfume, letter, and key, there were fragments of a Jewish prayer scroll, a child's drawing, a woman's hairpin, an old man's glasses. Each item held an unknown story, deepening her understanding of that dark period. She grew increasingly exhausted, her eyes bloodshot, her throat hoarse from calling out. Several times, she nearly fell asleep at the wheel, but each time, the child's sobs grew louder, rousing her. Her curiosity and desire to uncover the truth kept her going. She knew she couldn't give up, not just to fulfill her father's wish and find her grandfather, but for the souls trapped here, for the forgotten history. Finally, during one loop, as the oppressive sounds filled the air once more, Eva couldn't contain herself any longer. She slammed her fist on the steering wheel, shouting, "I know what happened. You're the Jews taken by the Nazis, aren't you?" The words hung in the air, and suddenly, all sound fell silent. The rain continued to fall. The wind still blew, but the footsteps, whispers, and sobs vanished without a trace. The alley was plunged into an eerie quiet, broken only by the steady patter of rain on the car roof, loud and unsettling in the silence. Eva froze, her heart pounding, a mixture of tension and excitement burning in her chest. She didn't know if her guess was correct, or why the sounds had stopped. At that moment, a translucent figure flickered past the right side of the car window. The outline was blurred, as if shrouded in mist, but she could make out a tall, straight frame wearing a dark, double-breasted coat. Its style, button placement, and even the faint wear on the elbows matched the coat her grandfather had worn in the old photo her father had kept. In the photo, her grandfather had stood in a wheat field, smiling gently. "Grandfather!" Eva cried out, her voice hoarse with emotion. She fumbled with the car door, throwing it open and rushing out into the cold rain, barefoot on the slippery cobblestones. The sharp edges of the stones cut into her feet, and the cold rain streamed down her hair into her eyes, blurring her vision, but she didn't care. She ran toward the spot where the figure had disappeared, shouting, "Grandfather, wait for me. It's me, Eva." Her voice echoed through the silent alley, but there was no response. She reached the stone wall, running her hands over every inch of its cold, rough surface. Nothing but wet ivy. The translucent figure had vanished as if it had never existed. Just then, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble, like a minor earthquake. Cobblestones shifted and rolled, making a rumbling sound. Small cracks appeared in the stone house walls, dust and debris falling from them to the ground. Eva stumbled back, leaning against the car, her hands gripping the door handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. She closed her eyes, bracing for the worst, for the alley to collapse around her. But the trembling lasted only a few seconds before stopping, everything returning to calm as if nothing had happened. The cracks in the walls remained, but they didn't widen, and the cobblestones stopped moving. In that moment, a faint thought, not her own, appeared in her mind, clear as a whisper, tinged with hoarseness and confusion. "Who are you?" The thought entered her consciousness directly, no sound required, yet she understood instantly. It was the translucent figure asking her. Eva looked around, the alley still empty, only the cold rain and silent stone houses. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice as she spoke to the air. "I am Eva Cohen, granddaughter of Leo Cohen. My father was Jacob Cohen. Before he died, he told me to find my grandfather, to find Leo. I want to know what happened to him, what happened to all of you." She paused, adding, "I've heard your voices, seen the things you left behind. I know you're here, trapped here." She waited anxiously for a response, her heart racing again. Seconds later, the thought returned, filled with surprise and confusion. "Leo, my son. You are his descendant?" This time, Eva could clearly feel the emotion behind the thought. A shock that spanned time and a glimmer of hope. Eva nodded vigorously, even though she knew the figure might not see her. "Yes," she said, "I am his granddaughter." The thought didn't come again, but a profound feeling washed over her. She no longer saw the alley as a trap, but as a repository of messages, a space of memories waiting to be witnessed. The loops, the objects, the sounds, they were all trying to communicate something, waiting for someone who would listen, who would remember their story. and the translucent figure was almost certainly her great-grandfather, Leo's father, one of the souls trapped here. His question had been a test to confirm her identity, to see if she could be trusted. Eva felt a surge of determination in her chest. She knew she couldn't run anymore. She had to stay, to listen to their stories, to remember them. She got back in the car, restarting the engine. This time, instead of trying to escape the loop, she actively collected the objects that appeared, examining each one carefully, trying to piece together the full story. She spread her notebook on her lap, writing as she drove, stopping to inspect each new item. She realized all the objects pointed to a single moment in time, a rainy night in November 1942, right here on Market Lane. And each object belonged to a specific person, a specific story. She began connecting the objects to the sounds she had heard and the doorplate years she had seen, a clear timeline and web of relationships forming in her mind. Through the unsent letters, fragmented diary pages, engravings on objects, and occasional flashes of foreign memories that weren't her own, Eva gradually pieced together the truth. On the night of November 17, 1942, Nazi SS troops, accompanied by police dogs, had surrounded the alley suddenly. Shouting in German and Polish, they ordered the Jewish residents to come out and assemble immediately, claiming they were being evacuated to a safe ghetto in the east, with plenty of food and shelter. The Jewish residents had already endured years of persecution. Though skeptical, they had no choice but to obey, facing the SS guns and barking dogs. They packed small bags in a hurry, taking their most precious possessions, and left the alley with a faint hope for the future. What they didn't know was that the safe ghetto was a lie. Waiting for them were the gas chambers and crematoria of Treblinka concentration camp. Market Lane had been their last taste of freedom, their final connection to their hometown, their loved ones, and a normal life. Her grandfather Leo Cohen had been only 7 years old at the time, taken away with his parents and grandparents. The yellowed portrait was the last photo taken of Leo, taken by his mother Sarah at the town photography studio for his 7th birthday. The half bottle of rose perfume had been carefully poured into a small vial by Sarah before they were taken. She had wanted Leo to remember the scent of his mother, the scent of a normal life. The rusted key had been hidden in Leo's pocket by his father, Eva's great-grandfather, before they left. He had told Leo it was the key to their home, and when they returned, they would use it to unlock the door. The tattered teddy bear had been Leo's favorite toy, which he had clung to tightly until the SS tore it from his arms and threw it in the alley. Grief overwhelmed Eva, tears streaming down her cheeks to soak her notebook, smudging the ink. She finally understood why her father had said Leo hadn't disappeared. He had been hidden in a page that no one had turned. This history had been forgotten by too many, the stories of these Jewish families buried under the dust of time. They were not cold statistics, not a single line in a history book. They were real people, with blood and flesh, with families and loves and fears. As midnight approached, the rain intensified again, the wind growing shrill, like the mingled cries of countless people. Eva noticed the car headlights beginning to flicker, the light growing dimmer, like a candle in the wind about to be extinguished. She remembered the pattern she had observed in the loops. When the headlights started to flicker, a cycle was ending. From past experience, the lights would go out completely in about 10 minutes, and then everything would start over. She would find herself back at the alley entrance. Leo's photo would reappear on the passenger seat, and she would relive it all again. This was the 5th night she had been trapped in the loop. Her body was exhausted, her mind on the verge of collapse, but her resolve grew stronger. She knew this time she couldn't let the loop restart. She had to do something, for the souls trapped here, and for her grandfather. But this time, Eva made a different choice. Instead of speeding up or searching for an exit, she pressed the brake gently, the car coming to a smooth stop on the wet cobblestones. She turned off the engine, and silence fell over the car, broken only by the rain and wind outside. The headlights went out completely, plunging the alley into pitch darkness. Only occasional flashes of lightning in the distance illuminated the road briefly, casting eerie shadows of the stone houses. Eva felt no fear, only an overwhelming sense of calm. She knew the real test was about to begin. She took a deep breath, opened the car door, and stepped out. The cold rain hit her face, jolting her awake, the exhaustion fading slightly. She didn't get back in the car, but walked steadily toward the center of the alley, each step deliberate, like she was performing a sacred ritual. She stopped in the middle of the alley, rain streaming down her hair, face and neck soaking her clothes to the skin, but she didn't care. She pulled her father's pocket watch from her pocket, clutching it tightly before raising it above her head. During a previous loop, she had discovered a small koan engraved on the back, along with a faint Hebrew inscription. She had looked it up, and it meant God is with us. It was a family heirloom, passed down from Eva's great-great-grandfather to his son. Before Leo's father was taken away, he had hidden the watch with the bakery owner, Kowalski, asking him to give it to Leo if he ever got the chance. But Kowalski had also been taken by the Nazis later, and the watch had passed through several hands before somehow ending up with Eva's father. The watch was not just a family keepsake. It was a witness to history. Eva stared at it, as if seeing her grandfather Leo, her great-grandparents, and all the Jewish families trapped here. Eva took a deep breath, speaking in halting Polish, her voice faint but unwavering. "I know you're here. I've seen the things you left behind, the rose perfume, the house key, the teddy bear, the unsent letters. I've heard your voices, your whispers, your sobs, your prayers. I know who you are, what you endured. I am Eva Cohen, granddaughter of Leo Cohen. In the name of my blood, in the name of the Cohen family, I bear witness to your existence, to your suffering, and to your courage. Please, let me see. Let me remember. Let me carry your story out into the world." She closed her eyes, waiting for a response. She didn't know what would happen, whether the alley would collapse or the loop would restart. But she was ready. As soon as the words left her mouth, a miracle happened. The alley didn't open an exit, nor did it collapse. It began to unfold. First, faint lights appeared on the stone house walls, growing brighter until they formed glowing images, like movie screens covering the entire length of the walls. These images were not the terrifying scenes of persecution she had anticipated. No SS guns, no barking dogs. Instead, they were ordinary, warm moments, fragments of their daily lives on this alley. Eva opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face as she watched. She knew these were the moments they wanted her to see, the way they wanted to be remembered. In the images, Sarah was adjusting young Leo's collar, her fingers gently smoothing the wrinkles in his shirt, whispering a quiet warning. Leo looked up at her, listening intently, clutching the light brown teddy bear tightly in his hand. Next door, the elderly Cohen couple stood at their door, exchanging their last potatoes with neighbors. The old woman pressed the largest potato into the neighbor's hand, her face filled with worry, yet still smiling as she said, "We'll be all right." The bakery owner, Kowalski, pulled a fresh loaf of rye bread from the oven, the golden crust steaming, its aroma seemingly transcending time. He saw Leo and smiled, handing him a small sweet roll. Leo took it, thanking him happily. Several children chased each other through the alley, Leo among them, the teddy bear in his arms, his laughter clear as wind chimes echoing through the lane. An old man stood at his doorway, kissing the mezuzah on the doorpost, his expression devout and firm as he whispered a prayer, asking God to protect his family. A young couple walked hand in hand along the alley, the boy draping his coat over the girl's shoulders, their faces filled with hope as they smiled at each other. The images flickered by, warm and healing yet tinged with unspeakable sadness. For Eva knew these beautiful moments would soon be shattered by the darkness of war. Eva stood silently in the rain, watching the glowing images, her body trembling with cold, but her heart filled with warmth and emotion. She finally understood why the alley looped endlessly. Not to trap anyone, not to spread fear, but to safeguard the memory of these Jewish families' last free walk. They didn't want to be remembered for their suffering and despair, not as victims, but for the ordinary lives they had lived, for the love, friendship, and joy they had shared, for their passion for life. They wanted the world to know they had truly lived, loved, laughed, and fought. The alley was their monument, the loop their cry for recognition, waiting for someone who would hear them, who would remember their story. And she, Eva Cohen, was that someone. The glowing images lingered on the walls for a long time, as if telling Eva their full story, every detail clear as day, as if she had stepped back in time to Market Lane before that fateful rainy night in 1942. Eva watched intently, committing every detail to memory. The button on Leo's shirt, the hairpin in Sarah's hair, the sign above Kowalski's bakery, the smiles on the children's faces, the devout expressions of the elderly. She saw young Leo playing with other children, handing the teddy bear to a smaller girl, who hugged it happily. She saw Leo's parents standing outside the bakery, talking to Kowalski, Leo's father holding the pocket watch and speaking to Kowalski with a worried look, Kowalski patting him on the shoulder to reassure him. She even saw her great-great-grandfather teaching Leo to recognize Hebrew letters, Leo's small face serious with concentration. These images brought her closer to her grandfather, to this history, than ever before. After what felt like an eternity, the sky began to lighten, a faint orange glow appearing on the eastern horizon. Dawn was breaking. The glowing images on the walls faded, like dying candles, until they disappeared completely, the stone walls returning to their dull gray color. The alley was back to its original state, the stone houses still worn, the cobblestones damp, the rain still falling softly. But the oppressive feeling was gone, replaced by an unprecedented calm. It was as if everything had been a dream, but Eva knew it was real. It was a gift from the souls trapped there. She stood still, watching the eastern sky, feeling the dawn break, her heart filled with peace and strength. Eva lowered her hand, looking down at the pocket watch. The case was still open, the hands frozen in time. Stopped at 10:17 p.m., the exact moment Leo's family had been taken away by the SS, the moment this history had been frozen. She clutched the watch tightly, feeling its cold, tarnished surface against her fingertips, as if touching the temperature of history itself. She turned and walked back to her car, her steps steady and resolute. When she reached it, she was surprised to find the car parked at the entrance to Market Lane, not where she had stopped earlier. On the passenger seat, all the objects that had appeared, the photo, the perfume, the letter, the key, the teddy bear, were gone. Only the pocket watch remained, lying there quietly, as if nothing had happened. She opened the car door and sat down, her eyes fixed on the watch. That's when she noticed a new engraving on the back. Fine, delicate, in both Hebrew and Polish, reading, "Remember how we walked." Eva reached out, gently tracing the engraving with her fingertips, tears streaming down her face again. This time, tears of gratitude. She turned to look at the alley entrance. On an unremarkable stone there, dozens of names had been carved into the smooth surface, clear and neat in Hebrew. She got out of the car and walked over, bending down to read them. These were the names she had pieced together from the objects, letters, and images. The names of the Jewish families taken away that night. Leo Cohen, Sarah Cohen, Isaac Cohen, Leo's father, Rebecca Cohen, Leo's grandmother, Jan Kowalski, Hannah Kowalski. Each name was clearly visible, as if declaring their existence to the world. Leo Cohen's name was carved in the center of the stone, with a small Star of David next to it. Eva knelt down, her fingers brushing each name gently, as if conversing with each soul. She could feel the lives behind the names, the profound stories they held. Each name represented a forgotten life, a buried history. She stood there for a long time until the sun rose fully, its light breaking through the rain clouds to bathe the alley, dispelling the last traces of cold and damp. The sunlight shone on the stone, making the names glow like stars. The rain began to evaporate, the air filling with the fresh scent of soil and grass, no longer heavy with sorrow. She knew the alley, the souls, had finally found peace. They no longer needed to loop to remind the world. Their story had been heard, remembered, witnessed. Eva returned to the car, taking out her notebook and pen. She sat in the driver's seat, the sun streaming through the window to warm the pages of her notebook. She didn't start writing immediately, but closed her eyes, recalling every moment in the alley. The glowing images, the names, the stories. After a long while, she opened her eyes, picked up the pen, and began to write. This time, she didn't write about cold historical data or grand events, not about SS atrocities or concentration camp horrors. Instead, she started with that rainy night when she had stumbled into Market Lane, writing about the objects that had appeared out of nowhere, the voices drifting in the rain, the warm, healing, glowing images, the forgotten names and their stories. She wrote about Sarah's tenderness, Isaac's courage, Kowalski's kindness, Leo's innocence, and the survival and love of all those who had lived there. Her new book, The Unspoken War, finally had its true first chapter, the heart and soul of the entire work. And she already knew its title, Echo Alley. She knew this book would no longer be a cold academic text, but a warm, heartfelt tribute to life and memory. She would finish writing it, sharing this history, these names, these stories with the world. She knew the alley would never trap anyone again. Their story had been heard, remembered, witnessed, and she would carry this memory, this pocket watch frozen at 10:17 p.m., forward, seeking out more unspoken histories, giving voice to more forgotten souls. She even planned to return here after the book was published, to erect a proper monument to these names, so that more people would come to remember them. The sun streamed through the car window, warming Eva's face, soft and gentle. Her cheeks were still stained with tears, but her eyes were bright and determined. The sunlight also illuminated the notebook in her hands, her handwriting clear and firm, stroke by stroke, as if declaring to the world, "Those forgotten will be remembered, those silenced will be heard." She finished writing the last word, set down her pen, and picked up the pocket watch, pressing it gently to her chest. She could feel her own heartbeat, mingling with the frozen time of the watch, like a conversation across the ages. She started the car, driving slowly out of Market Lane without looking back. Though she knew she would never forget this alley, these names, this history. The story of Echo Alley would live forever in her heart, and through her words it would live forever in the world.